Welcome to Crash Course Gao. I'm your host Kevin Gao, and today we'll be discussing E.M. Forster's novel, Aspects of a Novel. Now you could use this video for whatever you please. Learning how to write a novel, learning how to critique a novel, or learning how to write an essay about E.M. Forster's aspects of the novel. Within his novel, E.M. Forster defines a novel as any piece of writing over 50,000 words, so that's the definition we're going to be going with today, though we're not going to use it very much. He discusses the novel as 7 parts, 7 components. And today we'll be discussing the most important components, the 2 biggest components of the novel, plot and story. Let's get straight into it. Ba 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 ba. Small note here, this video is 1.25 speed. My talking is 1.25 speed because I don't want you to have to listen to like 12 minutes of me rambling. I talk pretty slow. So, enjoy. Story. E.M. Forster starts by introducing us to story. He provides us with a bit of a scenario here. He says, let's ask 3 men, what's the point of a novel? If you ask one type of man, what does a novel do? He will reply placidly, well, I don't know. It seems a funny sort of question to ask. A novel's a novel. Well, I don't know. I suppose it kind of tells a story, so to speak. He is quite a good-tempered and vague, and probably driving a motor bus at the same time, and paying no more attention to literature than its merits. Another man, well, I visualize as on a golf course, will be aggressive and brisk. He will reply, what does a novel do? Why, tell a story, of course, and I have no use for it if it didn't. I like a story. Very bad taste on my part, no doubt, but I like a story. You can take your art, you can take your literature, you can take your music, but give me a good story, and I like a story to be a story. And my wife's the same. And a third man says, in a sort of drooping, regretful voice, yes, oh dear, yes. The novel tells a story. And that's how Forster describes it. A novel tells a story. The story is the backbone of the novel. It is what keeps the novel together. And a story has existed since ancient times. Its purpose is still the same. As E.M. Forster tells us, the primitive audience was the audience of shockheads gaping round the campfire, fatigued with contending against the mammoth, or the woolly rhinoceros, only kept awake by suspense. What would happen next? The novelist droned on, and as soon as the audience guessed what happened next, they either fell asleep or killed him. Such is the point of the story. What happens next? Or, as Forster puts it, the question, and then. What happens next? And to create this question, to propose this question to the reader, a novel uses 2 aspects of story, time and value. Time, of course, is the chronological sequence of events. It must make sense so that your reader knows what's going on and can sufficiently ask, and then, what happens? What happens after? Does it happen after? That's what a reader needs to be able to ask. And to do that, we must have time. And the second thing, of course, to keep the reader interested, events must have value. Some events must have higher risk than others. Some must hold higher importance to the character. Otherwise, a novel would be meaningless. Nothing would happen. Nothing of value, nothing of no value. Everything would be the same. As an example of this, we can look at famous novel Catcher in the Rye, spoilers ahead. Holden Caulfield, when he's planning to run away from New York, when he's planning to leave his little sister Phoebe, that event has great value. And we're interested in that event. We say, why? Why is he doing this? And more importantly, what happens next? Is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? And this event has value, and it has importance, which keeps us asking, what happens next? What happens to this event of great value? And also in Catcher in the Rye, same example, everything follows a simple chronological sequence. So we always know something is going to happen another. An event always precedes another. There's no confusing, twisty time turns. Time is never broken, and an event always comes after another, which makes Catcher in the Rye easy to understand. It makes it easy to ask that question, and it makes it easy to be interested. But say that doesn't happen. What happens to a novel then? Say value and time are no longer in the story. Well, we can take the common trolley car metaphor. You have a simple rail, and we know where it's going. We know that trolley is going to either hit Group A or Group B. Group A being 3 random people, Group B being a family member. Which group holds more value? Who is to say? And that's what makes the trolley car problem interesting. That question of, and then, which is it going to hit? We know it's going to hit, but which one holds more value? And it's all about that decision. It's all about that, what happens next? But if we were to take that same trolley car problem and we were to mess up the rails so that we would never know if the trolley cart was to hit at all, time is messed up, and now it's a bit confusing. But if we mess up value too, instead of 3 people and a family member, it's just one completely random person that you know nothing about and one completely random person that you also know nothing about. Now the problem is no longer interesting, because no matter what choice you take, one of them is going to die, and it's pretty much the same person to you. It is the same person to you. You know nothing about them. They are completely clouded. And such, if time and value do not exist, the novel does not exist. And as a concluding note, Forster tells us, all the novel can do is to transform us from readers to listeners while the voice speaks. The voice of the tribal narrator, squatting in the middle of the cave, saying one thing after another until the audience falls asleep among their awful book. And as such, we can definitively say, a novel tells a story. Now, let's get into plot. What is the difference between plot and story? Well, Forster defines it as such. We have defined a story as a narrative of events arranged in their time sequence. A plot is also a narrative of events, but the emphasis falls on causality. The king died and then the queen died is a story. The king died and then the queen died of grief is a plot. That's what it is. While the story is simply the time sequence of events, a plot is why an event comes after another, the causality of an event. Event A causes event B causes event C, and event A and C cause event D. Such is plot. And Forster puts it as this, if you take another example, for example, quote, the queen died, no one knew why until it was discovered that it was through grief at the death of the king, end quote. That is a plot with mystery. That is something, and that is the fundamental aspect of plot, mystery, keeping us with that question, why? Why did that happen? How did it happen? When did it happen? Where did it happen? And in order to appreciate plot, two aspects are needed, two aspects of plot. Intelligence. Intelligence is needed to appreciate plot. You must be able to take those finer details, those finer, what do you call them? Those minor causes and connect them to an effect, similar as we did in our cause and effect unit. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, that's what intelligence is there to do, is to connect the little tidbits that the author leaves behind and figure out why, and figure out the plot. And the second aspect, of course, connects to intelligence very well, memory. You must be able to see those little tidbits, you must be able to remember them, and then eventually use your intelligence to connect them together like the links on a chain and figure out plot, figure out why. And in that sense, plot is incredibly simple. Simply just why. For example, let's take a novel we all know, Lord of the Flies. And again, spoilers, we're going to take a famous scene from Lord of the Flies, Simon's death scene. When the scene starts, all the boys are in an area around a fire and Simon stumbles out of the woods. None of the boys know who he is, the audience doesn't even know who he is. But as the scene continues, we, the audience, figure it out. We connect it together. We see a boy coming out of the woods and we think, why is this boy coming out of the woods? Then we think, oh, he must have been chased out by something. He must have run. He must be here to tell the other group something. And we think, why is he doing that? And then we think, oh, he must be that Lord of the Flies mentioned earlier. And then we connect the dots together and we're like, oh, that's Simon. And he's running from the Lord of the Flies. And he's here to tell the group something. He's here to tell them something. He's here to tell them something very important. And as such, that's our mystery, that's our plot. And then when the boys start attacking Simon, we once again must ask, why? And then we remember. We use our memory. We remember that Simon was dirty. He was covered in blood. He was covered in flies, or maybe not flies, but he was dirty. And so the boys mistaken him for a beast and attacked him. And thus we figured out a plot, a simple one, but a plot. And the important thing to take away here is the plot is causality. One event precedes another, one event precedes another is story. One event causes another is plot. That is the important thing to take away here. And Forster once again leaves us with a nice ending note on plot, which is about the end of plot. And he says, to end the plot, an author must cut off all loose ends, cut off all mystery. As he writes, if it was not for death and marriage, I do not know how the average novelist would conclude. Death and marriage are almost his only connection between his characters and his plot. And the reader is more than ready to meet him here, and take a bookish view of them, provided they occur later on in the book. The writer, poor fellow, must be allowed to finish up somehow. He has his living to get on like everyone else, so nothing else is heard but hammering and screwing. And such is the end of a plot. All mysteries are solved. There's no more causality. That's our end. Plot and story. Why and what happens next. And if you want to see me cover more of E.M. Forster's book, give me like a Pop-Tart in class and I'll make one of these in my free time or something. I will be spending maybe 4 hours editing this and I will be crying on my bed by midnight. See you. Ba 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 ba.